All right. What's happening, Black Level members of YouTube? Thanks for being here and checking this out. Good to be back. I didn't do a podcast this week because of Christmas yesterday, and I was really looking forward to being here and doing this because this has been a really fun way to connect with members of the community and talk a little bit about Free Heal Life and what's going on. Also, hopefully provide some content that's going to help you this winter season. So I think the biggest thing that I'm hearing out there and is technique videos are where it's at. And obviously I've been trying to do stuff for the YouTube members at the blue and black level where we're starting to get into a little more technique, some analysis. The last one I did, I actually kind of broke down a beginner telemark skier that I taught and sort of broke that down into little pieces, some things that I learned, some techniques that I tried, honestly, some things that I tried and realized that the person's abilities were beyond maybe what I thought they were capable of at the beginning. And that was a good eye opener for me because then we could sort of adjust and teach. But I know some of the black level members were saying, hey, let's start getting into some more like advanced technique. Let's start getting into some intermediate technique. And I think kind of how it's broken down in the memberships, I'm going to try and focus on the free videos. Generally speaking, I'm going to give more beginner content in terms of the technique stuff. The blue level stuff is definitely going to be for more intermediate. And then the advanced stuff is definitely going to be more black level member. And I thought this would be a good way to sort of vocally kick it off. Hey, Josh, good to have you here, brother. And, basically start kind of talking through some of this stuff and give a verbal. I'm going to do a follow-up video for all of you black level members this week. I'm going to shoot at least in the shop some kind of full body stuff, because as I'm talking, you'll probably realize like, hey, I'm not going to be able to see all of this visually. And I want to be able to give more of a dry land version of it, head to toe. So you can see sort of the body, in terms of how I'm forming shapes with the body, with the legs, with the upper body and whatnot. But today I'm going to talk a little bit more the verbal stuff and some things that you can sort of create a tick list for yourself if you're looking to improve technique. Now, one thing that is incredibly helpful with helping create good telemark shapes with your legs in terms of stance, in terms of how to get down the hill, first off, there's no right or wrong way, okay? So there's all these variants that are going to be happening when we telemark ski. The snow is going to be different every day. That bump that was big 2 weeks ago is small because it snowed too much. It rained and it's icy. The variants are so wide that I can't just give you like a snapshot in the advanced way of thinking that's just going to give you a single solution by making a certain shape with your body. Okay. But what I am going to try and do is give you things that can indicate where you should be and what works most effectively. And then I want you experimenting out there to find the best solution that works for you as an individual. Okay. So what I'm going to be talking a little bit about, well, primarily today, is how we can add some constraints on the mountain to give us a sort of game to play, okay? And these constraints that we're going to add with natural features on the mountain are going to help us to learn better positioning with our legs, with our lead changes. So changing your front foot, that's our lead change. And ultimately helping our telemark turns become stronger so you can dive into more technical terrain, steeper terrain, powder, trees, all this stuff. Excuse me. So let's talk a little bit about some of the constraints that we can add. I'd want to preface this too. If you haven't gone back, there's one of the free videos on the site. There's 2 beginner videos. One talks about how to make a good telemark stance, and another one is big toes for better turns. Okay. These are very, very basic, but what I want you to do is make sure you're cataloging those in what you're watching and sort of add it as a supplement to things that we're doing at the black level that's a little more complex, both verbally. Obviously, just today's talking, I'm going to show you a couple things, but then these follow-up videos, dry land, and then ultimately getting on snow and what it looks like. Okay. So I'm trying to create an ecosystem here that you can sort of find these videos that I've done. And I'm always trying to create playlists and stuff. So I'll try to, after I get off here, I'll try to make sure to put everything in the comments so it's easily accessible. Like, hey, this video is what I was referencing with the big toes, better turns, and so on. Because I want you to understand what I'm trying to do with YouTube is create an ecosystem that you can find the materials that you want and they kind of all play into each other. Okay, so let's get back to the main topic here, talking about constraints. So what do I mean by adding constraints when we go skiing? If we're trying to improve our technique, there's a couple things we can do. Probably the first thing that comes to my mind, maybe a little advanced, but if you can do it, moguls are a great constraint that's naturally on the mountain. So let's start with that. What we're trying to do is constrain our ability and sort of create these games on the mountain. Obviously, you don't want to, you probably want to go free ski most of the time, but let's say you're trying to improve your technique. You got a couple runs, or it's in between a run, or maybe it's bad snow. This is the perfect time to improve upon what you know and then challenge yourself. So constraints like moguls, it takes, an open slope is pretty easy. And we'll talk about how we can add some stuff to that. But a lot of times you'll have like, a groomed run and maybe off to the side, you have some bumps, some moguls. These add natural constraints depending on how you ski them. Okay. And what I mean by that is they're going to force you to do certain things. Okay. I'm going to go through a list of other constraints that you can add or identify on the mountain. And then I'm going to talk about what we want, what the objective of adding those in and how that's going to help us. So other constraints, trees, great one. Maybe you want to find some open trees, out west. I always say once you cross the Mississippi, it's called woods. You're skiing hardwoods. So if you're East Coast, Mad River Glen, anywhere east, Eastern Canada, Quebec, New Hampshire, Maine, you're skiing pretty tight trees, Midwest as well. Out here, when we say skiing trees, there might be 4, 5, 8 feet between big pine trees, aspens, that sort of thing. Either way, the trees create obstacles that we need to that we can identify as constraints because we have to maneuver around them. Okay. Let's talk about maybe you're on a groomer. Maybe you don't have a lot of trees. You don't have a lot of moguls. One thing we can do on an open slope is take part of the slope and section it off. Okay. So maybe one way to look at it, a lot of times when I'm doing stuff like this, I'll look at like the lift line and you've got like a lift pole and then you've got the edge of the run. So that lane is a way to create some constraints, some boundaries that we can use to stay within, much like the moguls and the trees. Now, trees and moguls are tighter and a little more advanced, but taking that nice groomed run whatever the steepness of it, find something like a lift pole in the center and then section it off. If it doesn't have a lift pole, maybe you need to find something like a narrower run. And especially as you get more advanced, or sometimes at older resorts where they weren't cutting the runs as wide, that can create a good environment as well. The point being is I really want to talk about how you can look at the mountain and sort of almost, when I say, again, just not to confuse anybody, the constraints are basically creating some sort of shortening the area in which you can turn, or making it various obstacles that you have to go around. These are all things that we can do to constrain our ability to do like some big wide open turn. So all of these examples, the moguls, sectioning off a part of a run visually, and trees, these are going to create different environments for us to maneuver around. Why am I telling you this? Well, the biggest thing I think when people are asking for intermediate or advanced technique videos is there's not really like one solution. And probably the way I'm going to kind of lead a lot of our videos moving forward is I want you to know what the objective is and create sort of these games that we can play. You can play at home, at your home mountain, to help you find the solution. And then what I'm going to do is try to guide you a little bit by these sort of things, by creating some constraints, sectioning off things, finding mogul fields, finding trees to ski. And what I want you to do is then take these basic ideas and put yourself in these situations where you're trying to get a certain outcome, knowing that all of the variables are going to exist. Like I said, snow conditions, weather, soft snow, hard snow, et cetera, et cetera. But we want you to be dynamic. At this level, when you're advanced or intermediate, we want to start learning the dynamics of that. And that's why I referenced that stance video. That's a very beginner thing, because it's saying, here is the stance. I reference like 1 foot length, heel to toe between the 2 feet, half a boot width apart, this sort of thing. It's to give you an image of the general vicinity that's going to create an effective turn as you're learning. But what I'm talking about is adding all of these variables that we have, and then how do we make them work? So the biggest thing that comes along in making these great shapes with a good telemark turn, shapes with our legs, where we put our feet, et cetera, et cetera. This all comes from basically being able to identify things on the move, because it's constantly changing. And as you add speed, it is a real dance because you're moving and you're sliding on snow. Okay. So I want to talk a little bit about, let's take that stance. And I think one of the things I want to move into is, how do we want to position our body as we become intermediate and expert telemark skiers? Okay. So the first thing I want you, everyone should know the word fall line. If you don't, that's totally okay. An easy way to think of a fall line is if I stood at the top of a hill and I roll a ball down the hill, where that ball rolls is the fall line. So generally speaking, if you have a slope, and let's imagine it's the same all the way across the slope, and here's the way down, and we drop the ball and it rolls right down the middle. That's what we'd call single fall line. Okay. Now let's add some complexity to it. I know this isn't the best with my hands, but you can tell if I rolled the ball down one section of this, it'll go down maybe the middle of this. But if I rolled it over here, it's probably going to go down. So we could call that double fall line. So that could add some complexity as well, how to manage double fall line and whatnot. But to start off, let's talk about something single fall line. Okay. So we've got this line of sight. if I imagine rolling the ball down the hill, where the ball goes, that's the fall line. Now, I want to talk about how we position ourselves down the fall line. Okay. The important thing first is, let's say I'm standing literally facing, this is the fall line straight in front of me. My shoulders are facing forward. Maybe I'm posted up just waiting to drop in. I'm at the top of the run. So in order to be able to make a turn, I'm going to obviously have to go onto the slope, and I'm going to have to initiate a turn that goes across the fall line. Okay. Now, why I was referencing that beginner video is I was talking a lot about traversing all the way to the edge of the slope, stopping, traversing all the way back. We're basically creating a basic stance, moving across the fall line. Okay. Now, we're on a little bit steeper slope, imagining this, and I want to come in and I want to go across the fall line. But the very first thing I want to do is understand that the majority of what is going on in a telemark turn is from the waist down. Okay. There's very, very little movement happening waist up. This is probably the biggest root of most issues that people are having when they're going from being a beginner and even in that intermediate phase. But to really become an expert at telemark skiing, you really have to understand that the majority of what's happening is lower body and not upper body. So the objective that we're trying to create is keeping a quiet upper body and allowing our skis to turn with everything below our waist. Okay. So before we get back to the constraints that we want to add in, what I want you to imagine, we've talked about the fall line. It's right in front of me. I want you to imagine that you've got a cord tied to your belly button, and where we rolled that ball, there's a tree at the end of that run, and you're going to tie off that cord to that tree so that no matter which way you go, your belly button's going to be facing down the fall line, down the hill. Okay. Now, we're not talking double fall line. So as you go across wide on the run, it's all one fall line. So that's why I was bringing that up. We'll try to simplify it. But the main objective here is to think about having that cord attached to your belly button and keeping that downhill. Now, imagine that. If I move my hips and my feet to go this way, I don't want my upper body to shift with it. Okay. So basically, if my feet are moving right now, my upper body's staying. We'll make it a telemark turn like that. And my shoulders are going to stay forward. Okay. And then as they go this way, my shoulders are going to stay forward. Okay. Because my belly button is attached to that cord, that imaginary cord, all the way down the slope. Okay. So there's a couple things that we can do before we add additional constraints and obstacles that we're going to be working with. There's a couple things that we can do. So one thing that I mentioned in that beginner video was ditch your poles. One of the biggest things that's causing a lot of issues with people advancing their abilities on the mountain are their ski poles, because it's really an added thing that you, until you know how to do it, it's literally like the last thing that you really want to add. And sometimes it can be useful, depends on the gear that you're on. But it's useful for getting A to B. To that point, I threw an old video up not too long ago, and someone's like, "Oh, way to use your poles." And and it was funny because I didn't even notice. But a lot of times I don't use my poles because all of the work is happening with my body. The pole, especially when you're going fast, I don't really want to be messing around with pole plants, so everything's happening with my feet, my ankles, my quads, you know, my waist, and my upper body's pretty quiet. So I'm not really using my poles a lot. So ditch the poles and learn how to get your hands kind of out in front. So a good way to, we talked about this imaginary cord sort of going to the bottom of the hill. Hands out in front is actually a really good way to start as well, to emphasize that belly button cord that we talked about. And we used to joke around, like when we were teaching people, and when I would teach like clinics long time ago, we actually used to say Hans and Franz, hands in front. Keep your hands in front, because what happens is if I go this direction and my whole body turns and my hands end up going this way, now my hands are going across the fall line. I want my hands to stay here. Okay. So that's the very first thing I want you to do. Sometimes if you have your poles, it feels awkward. You're trying to figure out what to do with them. It's just not really that effective. Okay. So hands out in front. And as I turn, you can't see my waist. I might have to stand up and we'll do a little bit, but that's why I said I want to do some full body video to supplement this. So you guys can expect that in the next couple days to finish up the month. But basically, if I turn, I don't want to go like this. I want you to know that everything waist down, my legs are fully turned and my hands are here, and that belly button is still attached to that cord going to the bottom of the fall line, tied to that tree. So I don't even have the ability to let my body go that way because of that imaginary cord that we're talking about. Okay. So you don't want to be like this when you turn. You want to be like this, everything waist down. So my legs right now are facing this direction. Hands are in front. You can see my shoulders are more or less in front. Okay. And that's what's going on. So when you go back and watch that beginner video, you'll notice we talked a little bit about this, but more or less the hands are basically following the feet. That's the first thing I want you to identify if you're trying to improve your telemark skiing, is where are your hands? And the best way to do that, get rid of the ski poles, get the Hans and Franz, get the hands out in front. And as you turn, don't let anything from your waist up turn. Okay. And what that'll do is basically put you in a position. I'm going to stand up off the mic and I'm going to show you how I want that to look. So that's what we're talking about. This is going to be so much better full body, but I couldn't do the live on a full body cam. So we're going to get you started here. But just that's the main thing. Hands out in front. You can see my weight when I was twisting my waist. If I'm starting a turn, it's less about you twisting back unless you're making an adjustment and your body's just staying still. Hence the idea of an imaginary cord from your belly button. Okay. That's the big thing. As I go this way, it's the same thing. My upper body, my knees are that way, but I'm still here. Okay. So what that's going to lead us to do is do that. Start on a groomer, like we're talking about, single fall line, and maybe even go back to something that's a little more basic. If you're an advanced telemark skier, great. Go on something steeper. Watch out for people. But I want you to do, just ditch the poles for a couple runs, and I want you to cut across. And as you're traversing, making a turn, I want you to feel like everything is happening waist down. I'm making my lead change. I'm coming up and I'm turning waist down. I'm using waist, knees, hips, ankles, and I'm flexing and I'm going from one turn to the next, but my upper body is not changing. Okay. So, almost here, you can see it with if this is my lead hand, my lead foot right here, my upper body is here. My upper body's still here. My upper body's still here. And my upper body's still here. So let's break that down. Hopefully that all makes sense while you're watching this. Waist down is where everything happens. Quiet upper body, hands in front, imaginary cord from your belly button going all the way down the fall line. So let's bring back the idea of the constraints that are going to help us accomplish this task by a couple different things. Moguls may impede us from not turning quick enough. Okay. So let's talk about moguls because I think, let me back up. I'm going to go this. I'm going to go sort of intermediate, advanced to the expert stuff. So how do you improve this? Let's start by constraining the run in front of us. Like I said, find a run. Maybe you can split it in half and find some little markers. What I want you to do is cinch up the width of it. So if you've got something that's 25 yards wide or 30 yards wide, I want you to make it 15. And you're only going to be able to ski within that 15 yards as you go down. 15 meters-ish for all the metric folks out there. Sorry, we're still in the imperial system. But what I want you to do is have a narrower lane by which you need to turn before you get to the edges of it. Okay. Now, take that basic idea of belly button down the fall line, and as you start going down this narrower lane on a single fall line groomer, you need to be able to initiate each turn before you get to the edge of the area. You know, play again. These are games. Make it fun, you know, like it's like being a little kid, you know, like think there's like lava on each side or whatever you want. There's a moat of water. I mean, it's kind of a dry snow year here. Maybe there's dirt and you're just going to eat it if you go off the side. Who knows? But the objective is I want you to constrain the area in which you're able to make turns. And your objective is to be able to make quicker turns while maintaining your body position the way that I've described earlier on. Okay. Now, if you can do it, I want you to continue to do it as long as you can. If you feel like you stutter between your steps, like it's a little, like you come parallel, your body's not positioned correctly and it feels a little out of control, I want you to stop. I want you to reset, start again, and only continue if you can link telemark turn to telemark turn with your body, hands out in front, only turning at the waist. Okay. Now, this is, it for people that haven't done this, you're going to notice that sometimes you get a little out of control and you got to stop. You have to stop. Think about what's going on. Are your feet in a good position? Are you making a good telemark stance? Are you moving across the hill? And when you go to turn, are you keeping your upper body quiet and keeping that belly button facing down the hill? That's what's important right now. Okay. So let's take it up a step. So if I had to go from an open run where we're creating imaginary constraints and we're making it narrow, now maybe you've got a tree run that you've always wanted to do, or maybe it's your favorite tree run, but you just can't really attack it the way that you want to. This is what we're looking for. A tree run, same thing. If it's 100 yards wide, maybe let's cinch it down again to something smaller. And now we've got trees as obstacles growing, not in an exact pattern, which again adds variance. And we want to make as good of telemark turns while maintaining good body position to get to the bottom of the slope. So the two things on this one is this is sort of the next step up. I want you to add the constraints of the width of the run you're allowing yourself to ski, but I also want it to have trees that are fairly spaced apart. Like I said, if you're Midwest, East Coast, United States, gets a little trickier. If you're Europe and you're skiing like above tree line, maybe that's not going to work. Maybe you have to go back to the first one and create your own little obstacles. But what you're going to understand quickly is not only are you constrained this way, like example number one, but now you have variables in there that you didn't have before. When you're only looking at a narrow run, yeah, sure, you might have to turn quicker and you're trying to focus on hands and body position, but ultimately you've got space and there's not trees coming at you. Also, disclaimer, just be careful. Again, if you get out of control as you make a turn, stop yourself. Reset, start again. Let these constraints dictate whether or not it's okay. What I'm trying to do is actually make you fail, because I want you to fail so that you start understanding the variations that are going on and how to maintain good shape of stance and body position when there's a lot of variables happening. And that's what makes a great telemark skier. Somebody who can identify and quickly react to what's going on. And these obstacles and constraints that we're applying and creating these games are essentially going to let you find different ways to the same solution. That's really, really what we want to do. Okay. So we've added trees in, we've narrowed the slope. Now we're trying to move and create our turns while maintaining our upper body quietly and working from the hips down. Let's move to that final example of today is moguls. Here's why moguls are good. Moguls are kind of like, it depends. Moguls can be very different in different areas. Most people don't have old school, what we would call zipper lines, where you look down that mogul line and it's just Z, 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 you know. They kind of formed, especially at there's a couple mountains that still only allow skiers. Snowboarders aren't there. I've never understood if you want to snowboard in moguls. I mean, that's cool. Go for it. I never thought the few years I snowboarded that was super exciting. But for skiing, I love moguls. And this is why. Those zipper lines that kind of look like a zipper, like little Z's down it. You can look from the top and you can see a perfect line when those moguls are just overlapped perfectly like this. And that's what's creating that Z and like this. And they're just sort of perfect. So moguls are going to be similar to the tree experience, but the zipper line is super advanced. And then there's just the mogul field as it were, however wide it is. And maybe you start with the full run if it's, not super wide. And then you go, hey, I'm only going to stay in half of the run. And then you start working towards the zipper line. Okay. What you're doing is adding, moguls are all shapes and sizes. Depths are different. So that little trough that you're going into, this is all going to create constraints. It's going to constrain you to make movement faster. And that's what we're looking for. What we don't want to do is lose the good upper body position with the belly button attached with the cord down to the bottom and hands out in front. And yes, you can do this without poles. I will say at the really advanced level, poles may, once you get to that zipper line, I do like to have poles. There is a pole plant that can be used, probably a separate topic from today. But let me know in the comments, if you're like, no, we got to know the pole plant. All right, we'll do some pole plant stuff too. And I'm happy to go there because it is useful in certain scenarios. Today is all about obviously the constraints, body position, and trying to create quiet upper body while you maneuver around obstacles by creating constraints for yourself. So these moguls, if you start on a wide run, you might want to, kind of go through it, and you're absorbing and you're trying to stay in your telemark stance. Okay. And you're moving around, and then you tighten it. Oh, sorry. And then you tighten it up a little bit. It makes you have to react quicker. What we're trying to get to with the zipper line is then you are forced to ski within these overlaps and not allow yourself outside of that particular line. That's why it's called a zipper line, because you're right on the zipper. You imagine a zipper that you have on a pair of clothes. I mean, it's just like little teeth. And that's what we're trying to do. That's the ultimate, in my opinion, the ultimate constraint that you can find on a mountain that's really going to keep you true to whether you're making good telemark turns or not. I remember when I started telemark skiing in the early 90s, it was like a rite of passage to ski moguls. And I haven't really thought about it until moguls were cool. So I just thought, yeah, to telemark on moguls, obviously there's more going on with your feet. The skis are longer, whatnot. And, I didn't think much of it. But as I've started changing my mentality about adding these constraints and doing stuff like this, creating these little games around making telemark turns on the mountain, I thought to myself, that's brilliant, because that's really what made us good telemark skiers, because that zipper line doesn't give you the ability to move outside the zipper line. And if you do, you lose the game and you stop. Then you reset in the zipper line and you start over again. But you're locked into this very, very narrow space. And you're required to make, one thing I haven't brought up is making good telemark turns, getting the separation. But the best part about moguls is they keep you very, very honest. You can't, if you go watch that beginner video, I talk a lot about this. Part of why the distance of the feet is so important is because you need a good athletic base. A telemark stance, a lunge, if you will, is a beautiful, beautiful, stable stance. But if you inch it up where you're too close, it's very, very unbalanced. And when you hit something like a mogul, it's going to tell you, and you're going to get knocked over. And so getting back into this zipper line, it's so great because it just locks you in. And the way that you're scrubbing speed, managing speed, is by pushing into those moguls and managing your speed that way. If you just let it go, you're going to get knocked out of that line and have to stop and control yourself. And that's why when nobody wants to get hurt here. But these are the ideas that we're trying to produce. Offer these constraints in the mogul field wide, then get it more narrow, go more narrow until you get to that single line. And basically what you're going to realize is that kind of in a final idea with this belly button attached to the tree at the bottom is your feet are doing all of the work. Waist down, really your shoulders are staying down the hill. If you ever watch like an Olympic alpine mogul skier, you'll notice like their upper body, it's all lower body just happening. Telemark's no different. Yeah, we've got to elongate our skis, drop into that stance, find that athletic base, get into the mogul, and then we got to snap back and do it the other way. But this is the beauty, because with telemark skiing, you have a lot more dynamics going on. Lead changes. Alpine, you're like this. When you're doing a full lead change and you've got to come back across the fall line waist down, that zipper line is going to help you mentally just say, I don't even have time to turn my body all the way this way when I turn. So this is a good way for us to sort of gradually work our way up to that zipper line that we're talking about. If you don't have some alternatives, if you don't have great moguls where you live, and the zipper line that I'm talking about, I feel like it's sort of like a mythical character these days. It's hard to find, like I know in Utah, I mean, we have Alta and we have Deer Valley. Honestly, Deer Valley, all-time moguls. There's places up there. I can't remember the names of the run. That's one of my favorite places to ski moguls because they're formed absolutely perfectly on this one part of the mountain. And it's a little bit less steep. And it just makes for really good, fast bump runs. Obviously, you got to have the fitness to do it, which, I think that's the other thing too, is skiing moguls is going to make you super fit. And that's always a good side product of Telemark skiing as well. So let's do a quick recap. So the main objective that I want you to work on is I want you to work on quiet upper body by keeping your hands out in front and allowing your waist down to do the work with the turns. What you're going to do is start creating these games by creating boundaries, constraints, whatever you want to call them, by making it tighter in terms of width on the run, either visually or with, a slow sign over here and the edge of the run over here, or a lift pole, and then gradually working your way up to trees, and then working your way up to moguls, and then slowly getting that mogul line until it's one singular mogul line that I was calling the zipper line. All of these things are going to create a beautiful environment with infinite amounts of variables. And that's what I want you to do, is start testing your technique with as many variables as possible. And some of those variables, you're constraining yourself to create the same result, the best result, as you learn how to do it. I can't encourage you enough to accept the fact that you might totally suck at this. That's what this is for, is to create an environment that is going to be difficult for you to accomplish the task. Don't make it so complicated. That's why I gave you a couple examples of the constraints. So you don't start off trying to go to the zipper line and you're like an intermediate and you're like, this is not happening. We want to make progress, and brick by brick, we're going to build our telemark turn, your telemark turn that's personal to you and that works. That's the only criteria that I want you to have moving forward is, does my telemark turn work for me? Is it accomplishing the task? You're going to fine tune it the rest of your life, because that's what this is all about. That's my philosophy on this. There's never an end to telemark in terms of how you can fine tune it. But does it work for you to accomplish the task? Then you can polish it up, and we can do that. So I'm going to show you, I'm going to share a couple videos of, these are some shorts that I have up on the YouTube channel. Shorts are like more like an Instagram reel for those that aren't familiar with it. They are vertical and a little smaller, but you should be able to see them. And I'm going to see if I can pull one up here, because I want to sort of play it. Let's see if I can pull this off. Let's see. Okay. Let's see if I can get myself a little smaller here. Perfect. I'm just going to play this and kind of just talk you through it. Maybe start it. And what I want you to do is look at the gradual nature of the slope right now. It's not too steep, but the quickness of the turn, that's what I'm trying to get you to accomplish from adding these constraints. I'm in a small zone, but I want you to watch my upper body. My arms are moving a little bit, but I want you to really look at the torso. Little cliff jump's probably not going to help a whole lot. Okay, you can see here, hands out in front. My knee's going to come around the front lead leg, but really I'm going to go right back in, and the body's really staying down the hill. Okay, that's what I'm trying to illustrate. Body's down the hill the whole time. And when I do this little video and kind of the dryland stuff, I definitely want to talk a little bit more about this, but let's watch this again really quick because I want you to just see, and I'm not perfect, trust me, but really keeping the waist down, doing the maneuvers. Again, it's quads, it's boot spacing, it's putting pressure on the front of your boots, on your shins, but not tipping over too far forward. It's a delicate thing, but you can see all these different types of snow. See, and right there, I actually turn my shoulders more than I would prefer. So you might have noticed that. Staying pretty down the fall line. Turns are getting made. There you go. Quiet upper body. And I'm making the turns in a tight space. So you can see, like, the whole point of this is really trying to keep it narrow, because what I want you to do is these constraints. Maybe you hate moguls, maybe you don't like tree skiing, maybe you think it's a dumb idea to divide up the groomer run, but this is 100% for people who want to improve their abilities as telemark skiers and then take it to free riding. When you go out free skiing, you want to ski whatever, right? Like you want to I've always felt like the great task of when I was kind of intermediate learning into becoming a better telemark skier is I wanted to be able to come up to any terrain and not even have, I was more then taking the variables in and how I'm going to approach it, because then you get to add sort of that signature style to it. Maybe I want to go and surf up a little wave that's over there on the left, and then there's a little rock to hop over here. The creativity that comes once you have the shapes and the feeling figured out and you can adapt to the variations, that's when telemark gets really, really, really fun, because you're not thinking about the terrain. So that's what these exercises are really about. And these are things I do 100%. I love going out and skiing moguls and creating constraints around trees, or saying, hey, I'm only going to ski this one little side. I love that stuff because it just adds more experience, and that's what I love about it. Let me see if I can find one more video. Let's see. Is this the one I just showed? Oh, this is groomer. Yep, this is what I'm talking about. So again, watching that quiet upper body. Also, one thing I guess I didn't really mention a whole lot, but how far you let your skis come across the fall line, that's, I guess, naturally what I'm trying to do is not give you too many things to think about. But you'll notice in this, though, it's like my skis are coming across here, hands out in front. There's more going on that I'm going to talk about in the dryland supplemental video, but you can see lead changes quick. I'm not letting my skis go all the way perpendicular to the fall line. I'm almost keeping them at like a 45-degree angle to myself. And then, yeah, you can see quiet upper body for the most part. I think this is the one I got called out for not using my poles. But you can see it's really what's going on with waist down. The upper body's quiet. And there's definitely some more stuff going on that we'll get into, but this is where I want you all to start. Kind of creating these little games. How do you get, I'm going to let that roll again. How do we get these quicker maneuvers? See, like, so you can start doing stuff like this. Quick, there, turn. This is what we're looking for, okay? We really, really want to have these quicker turns because that agility in the Telemark stance, that's what's going to make it so when we go free ski, we can literally ski anything. And this is a groomer. That's why I love groomers. Carving is a whole different video, but the general ideas that I'm sharing with you today are definitely going to play into any sort of steep skiing or carving. It's all the same body position, and honestly, it'll probably help you with your powder skiing too in a lot of ways. And yeah, that's what's exciting is most of this is going to transfer across the board. And that's why it's important. But I wanted we begin with this stuff, this discussion, something to get the brain working a little bit and just start thinking about essentially how do I get my body positioned correctly? And we're going to use these constraints in order to help us shape our body in the right way. Okay. So that's why I said, don't worry about failure. But when you do get out of control, which is essentially like quote unquote losing the game that you've created, is you're not able to be in control. So you stop, reset, start again. But those errors are going to teach you so much about what's going on and help you identify where were my feet? Am I in athletic stance? Did my body follow too far across and made it too far to turn back the other way? But these are the things I want you to figure out because your body type, your athleticism or lack of athleticism, whatever it may be, what are you doing to make it work? There is no wrong way to do it. Because like I said, you're going to polish it as you go and it's going to improve and improve and improve. So super exciting stuff. I'm looking forward to talking more about this. Like I said, I'll do a supplemental video for the Black Level members to go with this. Look for it tomorrow or Thursday. And it's going to be dry land. But then I think what I want to do is continue this. If you like it, definitely comment. If you were able to make it through part or all of this, comment on it. Let me know if you enjoyed it. If I'm going down the right line of thinking for what you're looking for. And then I think the next thing is have that little dryland supplement. Go back to those free videos for the beginners that you can watch for reference. And then let's get on some snow. So I want to show you a couple of the videos there because as we start talking about this stuff, I want you to be able to look at a video. And as you're getting more Telemark knowledge, you're able to start applying the thought process that we're talking about into what you're watching. You're like, oh, that's what Madsen's doing. Okay, I can see that now. I can see the belly button tied to the fall line. And like I even said, there's little parts there where I'm like, oh, the shoulders went a little this way, There's imperfections, but what you're going to learn through these errors. And even like I've said, grab a video, have someone video you, try different things so you have a more visual of yourself. If you want to send them to me, send them to me. You can send them to podcast@freeheellife.com. and I would love to watch videos, and I won't share them unless you give me permission. I won't share them, but I'm totally down for the Black Level members for you to email me videos and be like, hey, what am I doing here? But I would love to hear about it. So in the comments, let me know if you enjoyed this, number 1. 2, if it was helpful. 3, if you go out and create a game with these constraints, let me know what you did. And if you have a different idea for a game that might be cool, let me know. And I would love to try it myself. So I think that's pretty much it. Not quite an hour, a little short. I guess, yeah, if you need anything, you can hit up me at podcast@freehilllife.com, direct customer service at freehilllife.com. We've got most of our demos and rentals available. Boots, skis, and bindings, Free Hill Life protectors. I'm going to be out in the Midwest. So if any of you are in the Midwest and want to come hang out, I'll be up in near Ontonagon, Michigan in the UP, February 9 through 11, I believe, and be hanging out there for Midwest Telefest. I would love to see you up there. That'd be amazing. And if you can't make it, that's totally cool. But I'm going to bring out skis, boots, and bindings. You can demo on Saturday, I believe. I think we're only doing the one day demo, and then free skiing on Friday and maybe a little on Sunday morning. Awesome event though. World Telemark Day also is going to be happening on the first Saturday in March 4th. And would love for you to participate in that. Probably going to be doing a podcast either this week or next week regarding World Telemark Day and how to participate, and get excited for that. So much love. Thank you for being Black Level members. I really appreciate you. It's been fun to watch this grow. And like I said, let me know your feedback. This is all about you, serving you guys and giving you what you need. And I really appreciate your time and appreciate your passion for Telemark. So until next time, spread Telemark always. See you later.